What does the future hold for Disney? How will coronavirus affect Disney as a company? And also, let's talk a little more about coronavirus in the rest of the world. Welcome back to yet another edition of my ongoing new series, Disney in the Year of the Pandemic. Well, hello there! My name's Jeremy and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies to the theme parks to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, and the TV shows, and everything else in between. And that is why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is another special news video this week with some current updated news on Disney and the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. Today, I'm talking about how the coronapocalypse may shape Disney's future, and it's going to be big. I'm from the US, so much of my perspective is going to go ahead and come from that. And let me also tell you, if you don't know much about coronavirus, there are some great resources out there. I would personally recommend you start your check with the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. And I've got links down below in the description, so if you want to know anything more specific, definitely go there. Also, the latest updates and information will be there. First, a bit of news that came out on Sunday. Disney released this update, which showed that they were going ahead and closing down their hotels and their shopping districts and their restaurants in Disney World and Disneyland. And this really isn't the biggest surprise. It was expected that this would happen at some point. We've seen this exact same kind of shutdown happen in other countries. Although in China, we actually have seen some of the restaurants and stores open back up recently, which is a good sign over there outside Shanghai Disneyland. Another bit of recent news is that the CDC has recommended against gatherings of 50 people or more for 8 weeks. 8 weeks, by the way, takes us to almost mid-May. How long it'll be beyond that, we don't know, but that's all the way down to 50 people or more. Now, if that's the case, you can expect things like the movie theaters won't be showing big movies. You won't be having Disneyland and Disney World back open until well after that. So this means we're expecting more and more delays, which, again, based on the rest of the world and what we see in places like China and Italy, South Korea, these are not big surprises. We should expect big delays and a disruption to our way of life that is going to go ahead and play out for a while. Looking at some other information, Disney's stock has taken a massive hit recently, and this really doesn't come as a surprise because Disney is being heavily impacted by the coronapocalypse. Disney's stock over recent years went from about $30 to $40 per share in 2011 all the way up to $148 just last December. But coronavirus has since taken a huge toll, and we've seen Disney stock drop all the way down to $92 recently, which that would be a 38% drop in about 10 weeks. Is that the end of the drop? Well, there are a lot of factors that could easily make that drop go much worse. And that's because around 34% of Disney's revenue comes from its parks, cruises, and resorts. That's a big amount, but that's not all. Their studio entertainment division makes up 16% of their revenue. So all of the movies getting delayed are also going to be really affected. Combined, that makes up 50% of Disney's revenue right there. Even worse, this is looking at definitely having the potential of going into the summer months where Disney has a lot of big blockbusters planned to come out, which will really affect their profit in that studio entertainment section. Let alone the effect it will have on the parks division, which also sees huge revenue during the summer. Now that said, one advantage Disney does have, to some degree, is that the largest single section of Disney by revenue is their TV networks. That makes up about 40% of their total revenue. Now, that's all the TV shows, Disney Plus coming in there as well, and obviously all of these will continue regardless of the corona pandemic. But there's a big but right here, and that's that the TV shows and a lot of how Disney makes its money, of course, is by advertising. And a lot of those ads are going to be reduced, or they're not going to be worth as much. Disney won't be able to sell them for as much because people won't be going out and buying most of those products or going out to see whatever those advertisers might want to show them. And this means that even in that 40%, that is a little more reliable, I suppose, for Disney, they're going to get hit hard there too. And Disney Plus is not a savior for Disney on this front, because Disney doesn't actually expect to start turning a profit with Disney Plus until at least 2024, still 4 years away. So actually right now, it's a loss leader for Disney. The whole point is to build it up to the point that it is actually making money. But to do that and get to that point, they're going to have to sink in a lot of money first. And that could actually run into some problems just because of the financial hardships the rest of the company might go through. When you look at it, you can see why Bob Chapek stepped up to be CEO at the time he did and why Bob Iger stepped out right before we moved into this really, really hard time for Disney. And Bob Chapek is very used to all of these areas of Disney that are going to get hardest hit because he was most recently in charge of the parks, the experiences, and the products. And he has experience dealing with the movie side of things as well. This means Bob Chapek, as the new CEO of Disney, is probably the best placed to personally deal with the problems Disney is going to face very shortly. Clearly, we can see that Disney is going to take a big hit from coronavirus. And how big will that hit be? That really depends on just how long coronavirus affects the world, how long these lockdowns continue. And we don't know those answers right now. It also is dependent on how well or how poorly countries handle coronavirus. The more poorly they handle it, the worse everything will be and the worse the lockdowns will be. This means we don't know for sure what to expect. Also, something that matters there is how bad of a recession we go into. How bad the market drops will also affect Disney, as it will affect other companies as well. Again, we don't know how bad those things will be, but we can expect it's going to hurt, to say the least. A number of people are expecting the recession here to become worse than the 2008 recession recently. So this will be a very trying time for Disney, and we've got Bob Chapek to hopefully lead us through that. An interesting bit of news that came out very recently was an analyst speculating on whether Apple might go ahead and take this opportunity with Disney's stock going down a ways in order to go ahead and try to buy Disney. If so, that changes the whole field as to what's going on. Clearly, this is taking advantage of Disney when it's down. Will that happen? We'll see. I'll keep you updated if I hear anything more on that. If you hear anything more, go ahead and definitely let me know. That's the future we're looking at for Disney. It's going to be a long hardship, but we've seen Disney come through hardship after hardship through its history. Disney's old enough it went through World War II, which was a huge change for how Disney had to operate. Disney survived the 80s. And they survived the 2000s. And Disney came through each of those crises stronger than they were before. So let's see if Disney pulls that off again this time. I said I would also talk a bit more about coronavirus itself. A week ago, Wednesday, March 11th, the WHO, World Health Organization, declared a global pandemic. The Director General made the following statement that you can see here. He commented on how much coronavirus had spread outside China, how many cases there are. Now, those numbers, by the way, are dwarfed. You can go ahead and look over on their site to see what the current numbers are. This was the WHO ringing the alarm bell, as they say, loud and clear for everyone, to make sure people take the urgent and aggressive action that is needed. And frankly, some of that response has been really slow, and that will end up costing lives. There's no other way of putting that. Every bit of delay leaves lives hanging in the balance. Inside the US, we have recently crossed 3,000 confirmed cases according to the CDC. That number is changing rapidly. For the most up-to-date number, check out the CDC. Now also note, those are only the confirmed cases, which means that there are actually many more cases currently in the US. And that's not unique to the US, that works the same for other countries too, because the confirmed cases will lag behind how many cases there really are. And that's not getting into the US's other problems in regards to a shortage of tests, which means the numbers could be even higher than we think. Should you be terrified of coronavirus? No. Should you panic? No. Should you be prepared? Yes, most definitely yes. Should you expect major disruptions to your way of life? Yes. Should you enact social distancing? Yes. Will people die? Yes, they already are. Will you die? The answer is probably not. The odds are against that. The fatality rate is still a little unclear. To give a potential idea of the fatality rate, Thomas Poyo wrote an article in Medium last week where he put forth the following. He commented that Countries that tend to be prepared have seen a fatality rate around 0.5% to 0.9%. But countries that are overwhelmed have currently seen a fatality rate between 3 to 5%. Now that's just some of the numbers seen already. And note that those percentages are higher if we're only looking at people who are 60 or older or those who are already immunocompromised. But if you're not in those groups, well, then those numbers might be a little bit lower. But bear in mind that certainly doesn't mean you're immune. And even if you don't get very sick from coronavirus, you can still spread it to others. Part of the reason coronavirus is so dangerous is actually how much it's going to spread and how fast it spreads. This is because hospitals will get overwhelmed. Now, if coronavirus expands really quickly, hospitals get overwhelmed far worse. This means they won't be able to go ahead and take care of as many people as well. The statistics show that around 20% of people who get coronavirus need to be hospitalized. About 5% of those need ICU care, that's intensive care. Now, if a lot of that happens at a similar time, you can see our hospitals will get overwhelmed very fast. And we have seen that in other countries. We have seen that in the region in China where it started. We've seen that over in Italy as well. And that is a huge potential danger. If this happens, that's why those fatality rates go up higher, go to 3 to 5% instead of the 0.5 to 0.9. Because those people that need the intensive care aren't able to get it. Because the hospitals are already overwhelmed. And something that's not even looked at in that fatality rate are people that have strokes or heart attacks that are going to be turned away if the hospitals are overwhelmed. So this is why social distancing is very, very important. So if you hear this, enact social distancing. Do not be going out into public unless you absolutely need to. Stay home if you can. It really can save lives. Let me go ahead and share this from the 19th Surgeon General of the United States, Vivek Murthy. He posted this on the 13th of March. Yesterday, I spoke with doctors from one of the nation's leading academic hospitals located in a state where COVID-19 cases are increasing quickly. This is what they told me. They've been seeing many patients with symptoms concerning for COVID-19 who need testing, but they are unable to get the vast majority of them COVID-19 testing. Their only resource for testing is the state lab, but the state lab is severely limited in capacity and it will take another few weeks for the hospital lab to implement its own test. So the hospital is saving their test requests for only those who are severely ill, such as those with acute respiratory distress syndrome, who have tested negative for other conditions like the flu. In other words, they're having to ration tests. For patients who do get tested, it's taking several days for the test to come back, during which time their contacts, who include doctors and nurses, have to be quarantined, taking them out of the workforce when we need them the most. They also don't have enough personal protective equipment. The doctors and nurses are having to reuse masks, which they know is risky, but they have no other choice. They are worried about running out of gowns and gloves as well. The doctors I spoke with are worried and scared. They know this isn't the best way to take care of patients, and they are putting their own health at risk in the process. This is happening at one of the, quote, top hospitals in the United States of America, end quote. And they are not alone. This is the daily struggle for hospitals and clinics across America. The measure of whether we have enough testing is whether people who need COVID-19 tests can get them. By that measure, we continue to fall short. Because our visibility into the spread of COVID-19 in the US is so compromised due to lack of testing, it makes it even more urgent that we be aggressive about mitigation efforts like physical distancing so we can reduce the likelihood of spread. So if you are reading the news about games being canceled, schools being suspended, and people avoiding group events due to COVID-19, and if you're wondering if it's an overreaction, the answer is no. The earlier we act, the more lives we save. Period. So that was what Vivek Murthy had to say about COVID-19, and that was 4 days ago. Remember how fast this virus moves. Whatever numbers you're seeing, whatever conditions there are that much worse. For an even better case to talk about just how bad things are right now, we can look to Italy, where their hospitals have been overwhelmed and they have had doctors tweet out information as to just how bad it is getting. This is from a tweet of an English translation of an ICU physician over in Bergamo, which is over in Italy, Dr. Daniele Maccini. He says, quote, "After much thought about whether and what to write about what is happening to us, I felt that silence was not responsible. I will therefore try to convey to people far from our reality what we are living in Bergamo in these days of COVID-19 pandemic. I understand the need not to create panic, But when the message of the dangerousness of what is happening does not reach people, I shudder. I myself watched with some amazement the reorganization of the entire hospital in the past week, when our current enemy was still in the shadows. The wards slowly emptied. Elective activities were interrupted. Intensive care were freed up to create as many beds as possible. All this rapid transformation brought an atmosphere of silence and surreal emptiness to the corridors of the hospital that we did not yet understand, waiting for a war that was yet to begin and that many, including me, were not so sure would ever come with such ferocity. I still remember my night call a week ago when I was waiting for the results of a swab. When I think about it, my anxiety over one possible case seems almost ridiculous and unjustified now that I've seen what's happening. Well, the situation now is dramatic, to say the least. The war has literally exploded and battles are uninterrupted day and night. But now that need for beds has arrived in all its drama. One after the other, the departments that had been emptied fill up at an impressive pace. The boards with the names of the patients, of different colors depending on the operating unit, are now all red, and instead of surgery, you see the diagnosis, which is always the damned same: bilateral interstitial pneumonia. And while there are still people who boast of not being afraid by ignoring directions, protesting because their normal routine is temporarily put in crisis, the epidemiological disaster is taking place. And there are no more surgeons, urologists, orthopedists. Now we are only doctors who suddenly become part of a single team to face this tsunami that has overwhelmed us. Cases are multiplying. We arrive at a rate of 15 to 20 admissions per day, all for the same reason. The results of the swabs now come one after the other. Positive, positive, positive. Suddenly, the ER is collapsing. Reasons for the access always are the same: fever and breathing difficulties, fever and cough, respiratory failure. Radiology reports always the same: bilateral interstitial pneumonia, bilateral interstitial pneumonia, bilateral interstitial pneumonia, all to be hospitalized. Someone ready to be intubated and go to intensive care. For others, it's too late. Every ventilator becomes like gold. Those in operating theaters that have now suspended their non-urgent activity become intensive care places that did not exist before. The staff is exhausted. I saw the tiredness on faces that didn't know what it was, despite the already exhausting workloads they had. I saw solidarity of all of us who never fail to go to our own intern colleagues to ask, "What can I do for you now?" Doctors who move beds and transfer patients, who administer therapies instead of nurses with tears in their eyes because we can't save everyone. And the vital parameters of several patients at the same time reveal an already marked destiny. There are no more shifts, no more hours. Social life is suspended for us. We no longer see our families for fear of infecting them. Some of us have already become infected despite the protocols. Some of our colleagues who are infected also have infected relatives, and some of their relatives are already struggling between life and death. So be patient. You can't go to the theaters, museums, or the gym. Try to have pity on the myriad of old people you could exterminate. We just try to make ourselves useful. You should do the same. We influence the life and death of a few dozen people. You with yours, many more. Please share this message. We must spread the word to prevent what is happening here from happening all over Italy. Clearly, this was said to go ahead and bring information out. Give me a moment. That's hard to come back from and just jump right back into talking. Okay. So that was said to go ahead and help try to inform the rest of Italy how bad things were. But the rest of the world needs that message as well. Because the rest of the world is ill-prepared and is starting to become more prepared, but we are still behind. We still don't truly grasp just how bad this situation is, and we are unprepared for what is about to happen, and what is really starting to happen already. As Thomas Pueyo wrote in his article, the coronavirus is coming to you. It's coming at an exponential speed, gradually and then suddenly. It's a matter of days, maybe a week or two. When it does, your healthcare system will be overwhelmed. Your fellow citizens will be treated in the hallways. Exhausted healthcare workers will break down. Some will die. They will have to decide which patients get the oxygen and which one dies. The only way to prevent this is social distancing today. Not tomorrow, today. That means keeping as many people home as possible starting now. And he's right. We must enact social distancing as soon as possible. The closures of things like the parks, the movie theaters, delays, these are all essential to make it so that less people die. We need to do something called flattening the curve. That means making it so the infections don't all hit at the same time as badly. Social distancing, staying at home, helps make sure that happens. Help make sure to spread that message to everyone else that you know that social distancing must happen now. They must stay home if at all they can. It will save lives. Thank you for listening, and I wish the best of luck to everyone out there. Let me know down below, how has coronavirus affected you already? And on the earlier subject, what do you think the future holds for Disney? Let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, of course, if you liked the video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And come back tomorrow for another new video, and hey, it's going to be at least a little more cheerful than talking about coronavirus, I swear this time. And if you haven't done it yet, click that subscribe button and ring that bell. Have a magical day, and may the force be with you, always.